Welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I'm Clayton.
I'm Marina.
And I'm here today with Claire Harris of Pets to Places, a pet taxi franchise.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Claire, tell us all about what you do, what your mission is, and just enlighten everybody on Pets to Places and what you advocate for.
So Pets to Places is the world's first pet taxi franchise. So what is a pet taxi? I get that question a lot. So it's a taxi service, but for pets. So where do pets go? They go to like the vets and the groomers and kennels and catteries and that kind of thing. That's essentially us in a nutshell. Pets to Places kind of does what it says on the tin.
It's interesting because we obviously, we're dog owners, and Marina had a life-changing car crash in 2015 and was in a wheelchair for the best part of 6 years. And during that period of time, we had real problems because obviously we have 5 dogs. And so getting our dogs to, let's say, a vet's, when I used to work away, because my wholesalers was in Sittingbourne and I live in Wisbech in Cambridgeshire. So I used to spend 3 days a week sleeping down there. So if, let's say, an emergency would happen, actually finding somebody who would come, take the dog to the vets, etc., was a real problem for us. So it's definitely something we understand massively.
It's a very needed service, actually. And I think people who drive and have their own car don't realise, you just don't think when you have your own car, like, oh, you just get in your car. I think you take it for granted when you drive and you have your own car and you get in your car, you're going wherever you're going and you just do that without even thinking about it. But there's actually a lot of people that don't drive, or like you guys, maybe you're a 1-car family or the other person has whatever limiting life situations that maybe mean that they can't drive or whatever. So there's actually a huge amount of people that don't drive and don't have their own vehicle, or they do drive but they don't own a vehicle, especially with the cost of living and more people working from home. Why, if you don't need that expense, then why have it? So there is actually a real need for the service, just from the perspective that a lot of people don't have their own vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting one because obviously, like for me personally, it's a service we would have needed at the time. And speaking to just general taxi companies, they don't want a dog in the car because hair, they're not geared up for it. They maybe don't have the right restraints. That some people are scared of dogs. So actually, just having a service in an area is an important thing. But how do you turn that into a business? Because it's my worry would be scale and the amount of customers you'd actually have in that area. Because although I can see it was something I would have definitely used, my worry is always that I'm not always the target audience, and that the target audience actually can be quite large to make a business successful.
I think you've made a really good point there, though. The problem is with the sort of people taxis, as we refer to them, the normal taxis, they don't always take animals for various different reasons. And I think, exactly like you said, if you're taking a pet in the car, especially a dog, perhaps not so much a cat because they're generally in a basket, but if you're taking a dog in a car, they are going to get dog hair on the car. That's just life of dogs, isn't it? You spend your life covered in dog hair. But, the next person who gets in that taxi, maybe they've got like an important interview to go for, or they're going for lunch or something. So they don't want pet hair on their clothes. And, cats never want to be in cars. In my experience, a cat doesn't really want to be in a car, in a basket. So they get very nervous and they have an accident, as you can imagine, a smelly one. And, if you were to get in that taxi directly afterwards and you were going out for lunch, maybe you were meeting people for lunch, would you really want to get in a taxi that a cat has just had a little accident in? Like, you wouldn't really, would you? So I do kind of agree that the taxis don't take pets. Obviously, that's not very helpful for the general public when they need to get their pet somewhere, but that's kind of where Pets to Places was born. So Pets to Places actually started from a chance conversation with a vet receptionist who said, people are always looking to get their pet to the vet, they don't drive. Could you, why don't you do that? And I was like, oh, okay. So originally the business was actually called Pets to Vets, but then people needed to go to a lot more places. So that's why the business is now called Pets to Places, because it does what it says on the tin. We can pretty much take pets wherever they need to go. And like I said, there's actually a lot of people that don't drive. So that predominantly is our customer base, is people who don't drive. But then we're finding where pet ownership is changing, like 62% of pet owners in the UK are now the 16 to 34-year-olds. So where I think people have maybe considered pet owners are like older people living by themselves, which is absolutely true because that's a huge part of our customer base. I think the younger generation are now choosing pets over kids and partners. Pets are the new kids. Yay. So,
I'm all for that.
me too. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, where we're maybe seeing an aging population who are massive pet lovers, we're also seeing a change in society, and where a lot of the younger generation are now pet owners as well. And I think the younger generation, I don't know whether it's because of COVID, but I think a lot more people, that kind of put the spanner in the works for learning to drive a bit, didn't it? So, but I think because a lot more people work from home now, I think, if you don't really need a car, then why have one? Because actually the cost of owning a car is quite a lot. And if you work from home, or, I think the younger generation are predominantly, they just want to have fun, and why shouldn't they? That's what being young is all about, right?
But I think also for like urban populations, especially, it's quite common now for people just to use public transport.
Yeah.
Because having a car, it's not cheap. Like parking a car is not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So just the whole infrastructure of having a car and living in the city is problematic.
Yeah.
I'd like a guy I know who lives in London. He shares a car with 2 other families, for example. But if you've got a pet, your vets, or let's say especially if you've got to take it to a specialist, that might be 10 miles away, and then do you want to take a sick pet on a tube or on a bus? I mean,
exactly.
So I can definitely get it.
It's even if where you're going, like you just said about the specialist veterinary hospitals, we go to one, I think it's in like Yardley Gobian or somewhere like that. And it's called Davies Veterinary. And it's literally, we've
actually used them. Yeah.
They're literally in the middle of nowhere. How would you even get a bus there? The only way to get there is via a car. And if you can't find a people taxi to take you, then, not everybody has friends and family. And at the end of the day, even if you do have friends and family with the car who are willing to help, everybody's at work during the day. So how are you supposed to get there? That's where we found a gap in the market.
Absolutely. Do you find, because there's a lot more like pet, is it just vets and dog specific places, or are you finding now that, like, I think the range recently has started allowing dogs in, there's so many more sort of dog friendly pubs, shops. Are you finding people using those more to go to those places with their pets, or is it mainly just your vets, groomers, kennels, that kind of thing?
Predominantly it is vets and groomers and kennels. We don't really do a lot of social stuff. I don't think that whilst absolutely society is changing, we're becoming a way more of a dog friendly nation where pets are allowed in, dogs are allowed into a lot more places now. And I think there's so much awareness around that at the moment. I think more establishment, and especially, the food and beverage industry is struggling a little bit, aren't they? So I think they're having to kind of go that extra mile and be dog friendly so that they get more people in the door. So we've not found a massive uptake so far, but then I think because that's kind of quite new, that I think over the next few years, I think we will probably see.
I can imagine a lot of younger people using it to get themselves to places they want to go, not just that their pets need to go.
Exactly. And I think where pets are becoming the new kids, and especially dogs, everywhere you would go with the child, you would now just go with the dog. So, like you say, people want to take their dog with them. They don't want to leave the dog at home. They want to take the dog with them. A dog is part of the family. So why wouldn't you take the dog with you?
And I think as that gets more and more common, that leaves your business more room for growth as well.
Absolutely. I think we are very lucky that we positioned ourselves in the marketplace at just the right time, because we are, the front runners in the pet transport industry. There's not really anybody else doing what we do. If they are, they're doing it badly. I see a lot of people online who think, let's start a pet transport business because they think that's easy. A lot of people see our success, but here we are 10 years down the line. You didn't see the first few years where it took us a very long time to be established. Like any business that you start, it takes a long time to become established and, really make a name for yourself. And that doesn't just happen overnight. And I think people look at our success, they think, oh, I'm going to do that as well. And then they start a pet taxi. They're really bad at it, using completely the wrong equipment, and they haven't got a clue what they're doing. Hopefully I won't get sued for saying that. But I was asked, I'm on a few pet transport pages, and I was asked to join their group. They started a group saying, oh, we're really raising the standards in how to transport pets. And I was like, whose standards are you raising? And I said, like, who are you people? And they, messaged me with who they are, linked to their website. And these were people who were using wire folding crates in their van, stacking them on top of each other in these single panel vans, stacking them on top of each other. And I'm like, and you're starting a group on how to transport pets? Trust me, don't quit the day job. Actually, do quit the day job because you're not even doing that well. So it's a subject that I'm actually really passionate about, bordering on angry. Yeah. Because people just haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue. My knowledge has been gained over many, many years through hours of researching every aspect of just transport, not just transporting pets, but just the transport industry. Like, did you know when cars were invented in the 1800s, they didn't even have steering wheels or brakes? And they could only go 8 miles an hour.
Yeah. It's interesting because obviously I've seen different car restraint products over the years, some which are Chinese made, like designed to retail for like £2-3, and you kind of know that can't be that useful. I mean, I remember the car safety advert when I was from a few years back, could be 5 years ago, could be 20 years ago, I'm not sure. Everything seems the same nowadays, but where the people in the back seats aren't wearing seat belts. Yeah. And the car crashes and the people in the front at the back headbutt the people in the front into the windscreen, and it's all like, wow. They killed their parents and then sat down or something like that. It was some particularly gruesome thing. But I guess the same is true with dogs, right? If you've got a St. Bernard in the back seats of your car and you've just got one of those $199 car seat restraints and you crash, it's going to cause damage.
It's going to hurt a lot.
It's going to hurt the dog.
St. Bernard probably weighs more than I do. So.
Yeah, it's going to hurt you and it's going to hurt the dog.
Absolutely.
And so it's actually having the right information out there. And I know you're passionate about this, so what should people be doing when it comes to car seat restraint? Because I'll be honest, I don't really know, if I'm honest.
I work in a pet shop and we sell those £2 ones. And from my point of view, when someone's coming in the shop and they need to restrain their dog, I'd rather they was restrained by something than nothing at all. I will always say, you should really invest in a harness, and, if you really want to get a good one, get one of the car boot crash tested crates. Past that, that's even someone who sells that kind of stuff. That's my knowledge. And I do pride myself on being quite knowledgeable of most things in the pet shop, but that definitely isn't one of them.
And I think that's the thing. You did hit the nail on the head though. You said crash tested. So that's always my rule of thumb. If it's crash tested, it should be, in theory, be okay. But exactly what you said, Clayton, the problem is people just don't know about transporting pets. We've all heard of, the highway code rule 57 is, dogs must be restrained and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, that's not worth the paper it's written on, to be honest.
I think a lot of people don't even know that though. The amount of dogs you see hanging out the window, absolutely. And I cringe every time.
That's one of my pet hates.
Same, because I just... Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest issue, is that people just don't know how to transport their pets. So they're not doing it because they don't care or they don't love their animal or they're not, bothered if their animal gets injured. I think it's just that cars become safer and safer now. We've got crumble zones and we've got airbags. And I think people have become almost a bit complacent about traveling in their car. You put your seatbelt on, you feel like you're pretty safe, don't you? If you actually look at like the law on wearing seatbelts changed on the 1st of July 1991, that all people in the vehicle have to wear a seatbelt, and that saved like millions of lives, people wearing seatbelts. And then the introduction of children's car seats. You need like a degree to fit a child's car seat. You need to be an engineer or something. Like, they're so complicated, but nobody's ever really thought about what if you've got a dog on the back seat that's unrestrained or restrained with the incorrect equipment or equipment that's not fit for purpose. So exactly as you said, those £2-3 car seats, the seat belts there, do you think that's actually going to keep your 20 kilogram plus dog on the back seat when it's got a universal seat belt, the clicking in bit? Like, no, it's not. So absolutely, if you're going to buy equipment for your pet, then I would say buy crash tested. That's not to say what's currently on the market is perfect, because it's not. Like, we've reviewed all of the equipment that's on the market, the crash tested stuff and the non-crash tested stuff. Obviously, the non-crash tested stuff, absolutely would never recommend any of that. And the crash tested stuff, I would recommend it, but I mean, that's not to say it's perfect, because I think a lot of this stuff has been designed by people who are like engineers. They're not, or designers, product designers.
The one thing about the crash tested harness that we used to sell in a pet shop I used to work in, it was so clunky you couldn't possibly take a dog on a walk with this harness. Yeah. So it was a case of, you'd get in the car, you'd have to put the harness on in the car and then put another harness on to walk them, which a lot of people were just like, I haven't got.
Yeah, exactly. And dogs, are they really going to stand still whilst you're doing that for 5 minutes? Not really, because they're super excited to be going out and yes, we're leaving the house or we're getting in the car or whatever. A dog's not going to stand still whilst you work some of them out. And one of them in particular, I won't name names so we don't get sued. One of them in particular is so hard to actually even get on and do up. You're there like, I feel like I need a degree in engineering to get this car seat harness on.
Yeah, no, we had the one we had was very tricky, and we'd put it on the dog and they'd all be set up and they'd say, oh, we'll leave it on. And then they'd come back the next day, we can't get it on.
Yeah, absolutely. And even I struggle, and I've been doing this 10 years. Exactly. I mean, we do actually use the one I'm talking about. We actually do use it in the pet taxi, not by choice, but because there literally isn't anything else for much smaller breeds. So what we use in the taxi isn't even sold in the UK. We have to import it in. It is the best of what's currently on the market. Everything that we use in the taxi is very expensive, so perhaps not, affordable for everyday people. But obviously, we use it as a job, so it's worth the investment for us. But the one that we have to use, that's very, very hard to do up, we have no choice but to use that, because it's the smallest harness there is available on the market. There isn't anything smaller. And if you've got a tiny breed dog like a Chihuahua, or something,
even Jack Russell,
exactly. You have to fit them to the dog's body, and they have to be, tightened up and everything. But the problem is with what's currently on the market. Like I said, I think it's been designed by product designers. I've been transporting pets for over 10 years, and I've transported pets in many, many different situations, hundreds of different breeds. And when you've been doing it that long, you can really see what doesn't quite work. And that's not to say the crash tested stuff is absolutely rubbish. It's not. It's crash tested. So to me, that's good. You've ticked the box. But I just think there could be.
How functional are they?
Exactly that. So even just, for example, like a lot of our customers, they're older and they've maybe got arthritis, have problems with their fingers. So if you've got you've got those sort of difficulties, and then you're trying to do up one of these harnesses, like that's going to take you forever. The dog isn't going to stand there whilst you do that. And I just think one of my missions at the moment is to design and manufacture my own range of crash tested pet transport equipment, because not only could I do it better, she says, but there's also quite a few products that are missing, and it is for like tiny breeds or puppies. There isn't really a good harness for that. And then even just like if you've got your dog in the boot, that's cool. But what stops them jumping out as soon as you open that boot? And if you've got like 2 or 3 dogs, then that's also a bit of, you can probably wrangle 1 or 2 of them, but you've got no chance if you're by yourself and you've got 3, 4 dogs jumping out the back of the car, but there's nothing to keep them in the boot. Now, I think there needs to be a crash tested tailgate, or there needs to be something to keep them inside the boot. Now, obviously, you would never ever attach anything to a dog's collar, because why would you? Most people do know that much, at least.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, I like to think everybody knows that much.
You'd be surprised. I've had to, because we don't have crash tested ones at the moment, but I would rather they had a harness.
Give me 2 years and you will.
Absolutely. Don't even need a sales rep to get in ads.
So there's also a lot of products that just don't exist as well. And even, I know this is a podcast for dogs, but cats is really lacking for cats. They're the only crash tested cat basket, which isn't even sold in the UK, is about 300 quid. And cats don't really go that many places. So, and you can only fit 1 cat in it. So that's just not really
cat baskets that are on the market, you've only got to look at them funny and they just crumble.
Well, and exactly. So the amount of times I see people with these plastic carriers and then they're strapping their seatbelt through it into so they put it on the back seat, and you're like, do you understand what would happen if you were in a car accident? Like, that would crush and the cat would become a projectile. And it's the same if your dog is on the back seat and they're not restrained at all, or they're restrained with like those 3 pounds seat belts. Like, do you know what's going to happen when your dog comes flying at you? So exactly like you said earlier, Clayton, about that advert that you were talking about. I know which one you mean. We're all showing our age here. Replace that person with a dog, and physics not my thing, but mass times whatever. I think I've read a statistic somewhere that a 20-kilogram dog traveling in a car going 30 miles an hour, if you were in a car accident, that dog would become the weight of a small moose.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter how many crumble zones you got, it doesn't matter how many airbags you got, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, because when my dogs were actually in the car when I had my accident, and when you were saying about the boot restraints, that is something I'd never, ever thought about. I always made sure my dogs were clipped in the harness in the boot.
Yeah.
But when I had my accident, I was trapped in the car and we had firemen, we had police, there was sirens. So for the dogs, I cannot imagine the fear that they were going. And they're pretty, one of them's pretty anxious anyway. Yeah. And the first thing I thought when they opened the boot is, I'm so glad that they're restrained, because if they was not strapped in, when that policeman opened that boot, we would have had 3 dogs running all over the A47 when it happened. They were fine, luckily, but they wouldn't have been if they weren't strapped in, because when that policeman opened the boot, they would have scarpered.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about your accident, but you do raise a really good point there. So, your dogs were in the boot and they were restrained. So that was okay for you. And obviously you were in the driver's seat or But what about when the dog's not restrained and the emergency services turn up to an RTA and they actually can't even get in the vehicle because the dogs are maybe, like exactly as you said, there's sirens and there's a big crash and, they can sense that you're injured and you're in distress. So, imagine what stressful situation is for that dog. They're
even
really
the best natured dog.
Exactly. We see dogs who hate getting in the car, who hate going into the vets. They're not their normal selves. And if the emergency services are trying to get into a car to help the person and they can't because the dog is perhaps growling or being aggressive, how much of a delay is there to help that person because they can't get in the car. Whereas if all dogs were restrained, then that wouldn't be a problem. They would be able to get to the person and, they can get the animal control people to deal
and that's
with the dogs.
The extra stuff of distracting the driver and all the other stuff. It's just another notch in that thing of please strap your dogs in.
Exactly. And I think that's the problem, is the law is not really strict enough. Like I said earlier, Rule 57, your dog must be restrained, which, that's open to interpretation for a start. But who's actually enforcing the law? I mean, technically the police, but let's face it, the police have got enough to deal with. They're not really, stopping people if the dog's loose on the back seat, are they? So, I think it's about education as well. So I actually created an awareness day called Pet Travel Safety Day, which is on the 1st of July, because we started it in 2021, which marked the 30-year anniversary. It became law to wear seatbelts in a vehicle, as I was saying earlier. And so we're really trying to raise awareness about, the importance of having your dog restrained, or even like a cat, in the correct place in the car, because, not just from a crash perspective, but exactly as you said, your dog could actually distract you whilst you're driving, and, then you could cause an accident because of your dog. There's just so many aspects to this that I think really need to be looked at. And I think the legislation really needs to change. I think there needs to be a lot more education around transporting animals. There needs to be a lot more information. Even reading DEFRA's guidelines on transporting pets is really flimsy at best, because I think DEFRA is a fantastic organisation who are doing a lot in animal welfare, but their main focus is on livestock. And a lot of that is when livestock is moved out of the UK. So I think there's a lot around that. But then what do DEFRA know about pets? I think they're just going with what the law is saying. And I just think the whole lot needs to be just updated to reflect the changing society that we live in. Because maybe 20, 30 years ago, people didn't take their pets to as many places. But we're very much living in a society with a lot of cars, whether it's your own car or someone else's car. And it's, the car's not going anywhere, is it?
And they're definitely not driving as fast 30 years ago.
Exactly.
As what they can and do now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cars go crazy speeds, even though technically the speed limit is 70, but not everybody's doing that on the motorway, are they?
No, it's interesting. So are you looking to bring out a range of products in terms of crash safety, like something which is more, let's say, it's applicable to the crash tested side, but also something which you can actually walk your dog in as well?
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're really looking at the moment, is we're looking at what's on the market currently, what we think works, what we think doesn't work. Exactly as you were saying about putting a walking harness on and then a car harness. You really don't want to be messing around with the two. So it's really important, I think, for it to be multifunctional. And I think we're looking to kind of do the same with cat baskets, because cats hate getting in. I know this is a dog podcast, but cats hate getting in baskets. So how can we try and change the narrative there? Let's have, baskets that perhaps look like a bed, and you can have it as a cat bed in your house. So I think it's just really looking at with my knowledge, and I think this is where I feel like I'm in a good position to design things, because I've been doing this for so long and I kind of know the behavior. I mean, I'm certainly not an animal behavioralist or anything like that, but I see how different dogs can react. And even to one of the harnesses I was talking about is an over the head harness, and the others are like stepping in with their front feet. Some dogs don't like their feet touched. Some dogs don't like things going over their head. So I think it's really having the product range that actually fits in with whatever that particular animal is suited to them, and also for the owners as well, because like I was saying earlier, some of them are so hard to do up that you just give up. Like you said, your customers just gave up and they came back and bought it back because it's just difficult. So it really needs to be fit for purpose. It really needs to be very easy to use. It needs to be at a really good price point that people can afford, because like you, I have 3 dogs as well. The harnesses that we use at the moment are upwards of £200 each. They're really expensive. Like the one in the large size is almost £300. Like I have 3 dogs. You're talking 600 quid for 3 dogs to go in the car, which, we take our dogs out, but we don't take them out every day in the car. So that would not be affordable for me, and it wouldn't be affordable for a lot of people. So I think it's having a product that isn't just fit for purpose, but it's got to cover a lot of bases. It's got to be easy to use, fit for purpose, multifunctional, the right price point. And I think I would like them to look kind of funky, because car harnesses are always black. They're always black. Like, that's so boring. I want them to be cute colours and a bit more funky and a little less boring, because if the dog's walking in it, you want them to look cute, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think also as well is that, like, just from a sales perspective, I think people tend to like deal with problems rather than prevention more. So even I think just having a crash tested harness sometimes for people is not where the education's not probably there. People don't necessarily think about it. But if you can produce a harness which they can use as a harness, but it's also a crash tested harness.
Yeah.
Looks cute.
And looks good.
And looks cute.
You can cover a hell of a lot more bases, and it doesn't have to be it's not such a hard sell, because, you know, like we're lucky.
You don't have to use scare tactics. I think that's the worry when you've got a customer in front of you, is having to resort to, you know, you could kill your dog. I never want to have to say that to a customer. I want to say it's safer, I think, and them actually like the harness. If they don't like it, you have to kind of resort to slightly stronger tactics to get that message. Yeah.
But it's not even about it could kill the dog. It could kill the people. My dog weighs 19 point whatever kilograms. I mean, she's a bit too big for the back seat anyway, so I actually don't transport on the back seat. But not everybody's got a boot that, you know, is suitable for a dog. So a lot of people don't have a choice. But, you know, if that 19 point, I think it's like 19.1 or something, if that dog comes flying at you in an accident, you are not going to necessarily survive that accident.
I think, while I totally agree, I think that, like, the problem is that unless the legislation is also updated to meet this, it's like there's always the right. So look, the legislation changed in 1991 for wearing back, but, you know, I'm not that old, but I also remember traveling around in the boot. You know,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you're like, it's like, oh, we got 4 kids, like 3 in the back seats, 1 in the boot.
Oh yeah.
And, like, I'm sure my parents weren't idiots, and they probably knew that if they had a crash, it would have been a big problem. Like the fact that I was stuck in the boot. If someone hits you in the back, the kid in the boot's probably going to be like mincemeat by the end of it, you know. But I think also there's that thing where legislation has to move to meet with it at the same time as the product has to become more multifunctional. So we need both to sort of converge, really, to get maximum.
Well, if you look at muzzles, the advancements when the law come in with the XL bullies, the design of muzzles that are out there now are so good and so functional and so much better for the animals. But I think it took that drive for there to be a law on muzzles for people to say, okay, we've got to do better for muzzles.
Yeah. And I completely agree. It isn't just about producing a product and going, hey, your dog will kill you if you don't use my product. It is about it's about education. It's about changing the legislation. I'm also on a mission to do that as well. So give me time. The government aren't quick and easy to budge, are they, on things? But yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think the legislation needs to change, and I think it needs completely updating. I think that it needs to be absolutely 100% law. I mean, it kind of is the law, but not doesn't really feel like it is really.
I think although it is the law, it's not a law that.
It's kind of not.
It's like a wishy-washy law.
Yes, absolutely.
And
it is.
I think it needs to be a little bit more robust, but it also, like they did with backseat seat belts, is you need to have a little bit of a campaign to show what happens if you're not using the right products.
Absolutely.
And I think there needs to be a little bit put in by the Vehicle Standards Agency and that sort of stuff to really push that thing forward, to be honest. So
I completely agree, and I'm kind of on a mission to do that as well, but I'm only one person, so there's only so much I can do. I'm trying to start a research project at the moment and just collate a whole load of data, because no data actually exists for dogs in car accidents, whether they caused the accident, they were in the accident. Like there's literally no data that exists. So I want to know from the emergency services, how much of a problem is this for them? How many, you know, I've gathered a couple of case studies, and one case study, because the government, let's face it, don't care about animals, they care about money. So one of the case studies that I found was a dog that was traveling, not restrained, in the back of a vehicle. It was a hot day, the window was open, the lady was driving on the M4. She thought she had a flat tire, so she pulled over into hard shoulder when we had hard shoulders. And this was quite some time ago. And she got out of the car to check like the tire, and the dog thought, oh, we've stopped, we're ready to go now. Jumped out of the car, ran into the carriageway. You can imagine what happened. As a natural reaction, she ran after the dog. You can imagine what happened. The motorway was shut for many, many hours. Imagine how much that cost. I mean, I don't care about the cost for the government, but, you know, because obviously that is a very tragic story. And, you know, the loved ones of that lady is, you know, you can't even imagine. But from the government, even if you're trying to get the government to change the law based on how much that just costs the taxpayer, you know, to shut the M4 for multiple hours and, you know, emergency services to come and stuff, even if we can try and get the government to change their mind based on that fact and all of the many other case studies I'm sure are out there, I think collectively people can make a difference. And if I have to be the person at the front kind of pushing for this change, then I'll be that person, because like I say, I've been doing this such a long time, and I see, you know, when I don't run the taxi anymore, but when I did, the amount of times I was sat outside the vets and I'd see people turn up with their chihuahua sat on their lap whilst they're driving, and you just think, do you understand what's going to happen if the airbag goes off? And I think that's the thing. People either don't understand, or they just don't think about it, or, you know, they think, well, I've got my seatbelt on, but there's an airbag in your steering wheel. That will go off if you're in an accident.
People do some pretty unusual stuff when driving. I remember I was driving down the motorway once, and there was a guy in the lane next to me, and his wife was holding the steering wheel while he was eating a salad.
Oh, wow.
Off a plate. He was literally had like a knife and fork.
Oh my God.
So like people do some pretty weird stuff, and that's why we need laws, to be honest.
We do, yeah.
Because the problem is that, like, as much as you might look at it and go, well, why would you do that?
Yeah.
People do the most ridiculous stuff.
Yes.
Even I did when my oldest dog was younger. She used to, and I first started driving, she used to sit in the passenger.
Yeah.
She was restrained, but she used to sit in the passenger seat up front with me. And I can't even remember where I saw it. And I was like, oh my God, front airbags.
Yeah.
She would, like, her head's like right where the airbag is.
Exactly.
That's not good. And then she never travelled in. But even me, as someone who's like fairly sensible and fairly dog savvy, had the dog in the front seat, which is ludicrous.
And that's the thing. I'm not judging anybody, because I did all of those things as well, because I didn't know any better. And it was only when I started my company over 10 years ago that I kind of learned more and more and more about
and you're like, oh my
transporting
God,
pets.
Why did you do that?
Exactly. Now I'm horrified. I'm like, oh my God. Thank God I wasn't in an accident. And I think that's the thing, is because everyone's like, oh, I've never been in an accident. Nothing's ever happened. And it's like, okay, maybe it hasn't happened to this point, but, you know, who knows? You're 10 times more likely to be in an accident at 30 miles an hour than any other speed. And everyone thinks, oh, motorways, that's where the big crashes happen. We've all seen one too many movies. But it's not. Yes, obviously there are crashes on the motorway, and potentially, yes, you could be in an accident on the motorway with your dog, but you're much more likely to
because you're comfortable
crash.
At 30. You're not paying as much attention when you're doing.
And generally when people are driving 30, they're driving around their own area, their own neighborhood. So you kind of do it on autopilot, which is even more dangerous. Actually, I think when you're on the motorway, you're more likely to be really alert, because obviously you understand if you crash at 70, you're probably not going to survive. Whereas if you're driving at 30, I think I think we've all become quite complacent, because cars are quite safe, aren't they? Seatbelt, airbags, crumble zones.
Yeah, I mean, if I was driving the car today that I've got, when I had my accident, I wouldn't have had the accident, because it's got that automatic
braking.
Stop. I mean, my car's a bit dramatic sometimes, and you're like, you didn't need to do that. But I wouldn't have had that accident in the cars of today. And that was only 10 years.
Yeah, nine and a half years ago.
9.5 years ago.
But then by the same token, I said at the time, if you'd have had that crash 20 years before that, you'd have died.
You wouldn't have even survived,
Yeah, so it's, you know, we're coming a long way with cars, but
And I think exactly your point, 20 years ago, this is what would have happened. And this is what happened 10 years ago versus what would have happened now. When we look at the change in society, as I said earlier, pets are the new kids, aren't they? So when we look at 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when there's a whole lot more pets in the world, I mean, 1 in 2 households in the UK has a pet. So that's already, in theory, half the nation has a pet. What's that? And that's increased massively. So what's that going to look like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Lots more people are going to have pets. Exactly as you were saying, people want to take their dog with them. They want to take their dog to the range or, to the pub with them or wherever. So I think more and more people are going to be taking their dog in the car with them. And I think we've got to look, whilst maybe right now, is this a massive issue? Arguably, I don't know. It could be. It could not be because we don't know.
Yeah,
we actually don't know. But the more
statistics.
and more people are transporting their dogs, the more and more this has the potential to become a big problem. And I think, I'm saying I'd love to do a research project. That's not a quick research project. That's over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. So we think about what the world is going to look like in 10, 20 years. If you're only starting that research project now, you're not even going to know the answer properly for another possibly sort of 5 or 10 years.
So you need to start acting before.
Absolutely. This is why we really do need to act now. And I'm surprised nobody else has actually thought about this before.
I think it's everyone. I think people who work in pet shops, it's our responsibility to educate on the products that we do.
Yeah.
Properly educate. I think it's on the manufacturers to educate us. And I think it's also down to the government. I think we all have a little bit of a part to play in this.
And I think the problem is, I was actually in a pet store once with a customer. I won't say what pet store, just in case we do get sued. The assistant was telling. It was actually my customer. She was looking for something for her dog. And I was waiting to see what the assistant would say. And she picked up this harness and went, "This one's absolutely brilliant. It's so super safe." And I was like, pretty sure you could get sued if the dog dies, actually. Because it wasn't. It was one of these really cheap, £8, whatever it was. Wasn't crash tested, looked really flimsy. Probably would have been better off tying a scarf to the dog. Do you know what I mean? But the assistant in the shop was advising the customer on what was the safest thing. And I was like, why are you telling her that? You don't even know. Why are you giving someone... That's like me advising someone on divorce. No idea about divorce. Don't know at all. Better off speaking to a divorce lawyer. But why is it we live in a society where, Facebook and all the Karens who've got advice for everybody. But that's essentially what we've become. And I see that so many times on social media that everyone's like, oh, this is what I use and it's great. I'm like, it's not actually. Yeah. And then you get into, a kind of an argument. I've got into a lot of arguments. I've had to come off of Facebook.
Yeah, I tend to avoid the Facebook groups now.
And I think the problem is with, again, another shop who won't be named, have they had something in the press about the seatbelt. Again, it was the one that's like £2 or £3, and they said, oh, our expert pet transport team have said this is a great seatbelt, and their sales went up by 500% on that particular seatbelt. Now, me being me, absolutely called them out on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. And so I private messaged this company, very, very big company in the UK. And I called them out on it, and I went, who is your pet transport experts? And they went, oh, it's the buyers. So the problem is, so they didn't have a pet transport expert. They had buyers whose job it is to buy products in that they then sell to the consumer. So you're completely correct. The shops who sell pet products have got a responsibility to the consumers to actually, number one, not lie, and number two, know what they're talking about. And they don't. They don't care, because this store whose sales went up by 500%, they don't care. They don't care about your dog, but I do. And that's the difference, because I do care about people's dogs. I have dogs. I love my dogs. They're everything to me. And, we see firsthand with our customers every day, people's pets mean more to them than most of the people they know. I was speaking to somebody this morning, and he was like, 33 people I know have died in the last 18 months, but my dog died, and that was the one I was more gutted about. But that's life, isn't it? We love our pets so much. They mean so much to us. And I know how much I love my dogs and I have cats as well. So, you know, the thought of somebody's pet dying in a car accident when it didn't need to, or injuring the person, because we all love our people as well. Our pets more, but maybe.
I actually had a staff member whose mum died, and he really wasn't that phased, but his dog died like a month later.
Yeah.
And he was devastated, man.
Yeah,
Absolutely devastated. He was like literally sobbing at work, walking around sobbing. But his mum had died a month before, and he was like, she was pretty old. That's all right, okay, fair enough. But his dog died, and he was just walking around sobbing, you know.
I'm going to leave that alone with the mum and just move on to the dog.
All right.
But exactly. And, you know, where these big corporate companies, they care about profit and they care about money, and they don't actually really care about the animals. And I think that's where I'm coming at it from a different perspective. Not only have I got that expertise, not only have I got that passion and that love of animals, that I'm on a mission to actually change the way that pets are being transported.
See, I actually think I think it's harsh to say they don't care. Actually, I think they do care.
I think they don't get the training. I don't think we're told. Or not in the one I worked at, but I know from other people, the pet shops say this is what you should be selling. So they sell it, and they don't really think much else about it.
Exactly.
I think
I don't think I ever got any training on pet transport. It's only from looking it up myself that I know. And I think from having puppies and having to look into how people are going to get their new puppies from us home. I learned more about crash testing and things like that, and I pass that knowledge on. But that's from me independently. It's not from companies training me or teaching me. And I do think these companies have a responsibility to train and teach.
100%.
Not just say this is what you should be selling.
Yeah, exactly. Because why are they saying this is what you should be selling? Why are they saying
profits.
that?
Yeah, well,
exactly. So you're saying they don't care, but
I think
it comes down to profit.
I think they're operating on bad information. That's what I would put it down.
The staff in the stores, I think.
I think the buyers as well, because I think that they're buying a crash tested harness or from a company that's selling them. Let's say something, and I think the problem is, look, I'll admit it, I didn't know anything about car safety for dogs. And if somebody came to me and was selling and said, look, this is a really good product, this is like really safe, I'm probably going to take it at face value. And that's not saying that I don't care, because I really care, but it's also you're operating on bad information. And the problem is the pet trade is so wide. There's so many different things. Like we're always looking at food, we're looking at supplements, we're looking at toys, we're looking at, you know, all these different aspects, and it's hard to be a specialist in everything. Now, I do agree. Saying you've got a car safety team and like literally just having a buyer, that's gaslighting.
Absolutely.
But I do think that selling products which aren't, let's say, up to par or fit for purpose, that could just be operating on bad information. But that's down to everybody to learn more, and it's down obviously for experts like you to get the word out. Yeah. And that's what it's all about.
I think that they have, I mean, personally, I know not everybody's intentions are as pure as mine, but I think these people that manufacture these products as well that aren't crash tested, and they try to, you know, fluff it up with it's safety checked, and they use all these really clever marketing terms. So it does make it sound like it is a safe option, but it's not.
No, and I think that's wrong as well. I genuinely do.
So they're leading people up the garden path, as it was, and they're putting profit over the pet. Because if you're selling a product and saying it's, you know, safety checked or the material suitable for whatever, and it's not, then you are putting profit over the well-being of the pet, because if it's not crash tested, it's very unlikely to hold out in the event of an accident. And I know people arguably are saying, oh, I've never been in a car accident with my dog, but, you know, how many people have ever, sorry, I know you have, how many people have been in a car accident? Like, you know, I'm sure we've all been, you know, hit behind, or someone's, you know, dented the car or whatever, but how many people have actually been in a serious accident? Like, not that many people. So arguably, well, don't bother to put your seatbelt on then. Turn off your airbags then. You know, buy a car without crumble zones or headrests. You know, I think that's the difference is, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda. it's easy to say never been in a car accident, so it's fine. But actually, that one time, who knows? You never know. And car accidents are becoming more and more commonplace because people's driving is terrible. As people's attention spans get shorter, and we live a really busy life now, don't we? The modern world is so fast paced. Everybody's rushing from wherever they're going to wherever they're getting to, and people aren't concentrating as much when they're driving standards have actually gone noticeably down since before COVID. And I think, the more and more driving standards are going down, the more and more accidents they're going to be. And I'd actually really be interested to know, over the next 5 years, what are the stats on accidents in the UK?
The last accident I had actually was somebody crashed into the back of my car while I was on the M2, the motorway.
Oh, wow.
Because they were on their phone.
Ooh.
And they literally just swerved straight into my car and went like that into the back of my car. And then, they were on the phone. I get it. I mean, it's...
which is actually against the law and has been for a very, very long time.
But again, it's about enforcement, isn't it? How do you enforce this stuff? And this is the problem. And I think it's making things... trying to actually like get it into the zeitgeist and actually say, right, this is something you have to do. I mean, look, people now, like if you get caught on your phone, it is 3 points. It is a fine.
Yeah.
If the cops do spot you, you will get in trouble for it. But that doesn't always stop. It was like drink driving, we've got serious laws in place for that, but we can't say that there's nobody out there drink driving.
Yeah.
But what we can do is just minimize it. And that's what we can hope to do.
Absolutely.
Let's flip this because I want to talk about your business because otherwise we'll just talk about...
We'll just rant about how pets are being transported.
Yeah, and evil corporations selling not fit for purpose products. But let's talk about your pet taxi franchise. So if you don't mind me asking, what if, let's say I'm an aspiring pet taxi driver.
Yes.
What's the costs? What chances have I got of making money? What kind of money can I expect to make? Like, what kind of support do you give? Give me your sales pitch.
Oh, sales. Everybody works in sales, apparently. Well, the buying cost at the moment is £10,000, and that is everything that you could possibly need to start the business except for a very specific car that we use. So we give the people all of the training. It's really individual. Like our customers are all individuals, whatever support and help they need, it's completely individual to them. So we treat our franchisees exactly the same. We've got franchisees who are dyslexic, we've got franchisees who've got medical issues. So they just need a little bit of adapting. So whatever people's needs are, we can adapt to that as well. So part of our training is also looking at what additional help and support people might need. So, even just down to things like, one of our franchisees is dyslexic, so we type everything out for him so he can just copy and paste that. It just makes it a lot easier for him. So we offer full training and support. So it's a 3-day residential training in Milton Keynes, which covers all of the how to run a pet taxi, how to transport animals, which is way more complicated than just stick them in the boot. And we do a lot. We are an award-winning business, multi-award-winning business. We've won lots of awards for our customer service, which has been called old-fashioned because it pretty much is. It's an amazing role. It's an amazing service. There's ongoing support. So we do lots of business planning. If people need support with other things like accounts, I hate accounts. I've never been good at accounts. So there's certain aspects of the role that people aren't particularly good at, like maybe they're not good at accounts or maybe they're not so good at social media. There's complete full support, whatever that looks like to the individual. It's pretty cool. It's one of those roles that, are you going to be a millionaire as a franchisee? Not likely. But if you want a role that you absolutely love and you love helping people, so we take franchisees based on who they are as people. We're not really bothered what you've done before. If you love helping people and you love pets, then that's the kind of fit that we're looking for. People who genuinely don't think going above and beyond is going above and beyond. That's just what being a decent human being looks like. That's kind of who we're looking for.
Well, do you give any help in terms of sales support? So obviously, like the big problem with any business is actually having your client base and actually having that feed through of customers. Do you give any help with that, or do you give them sales techniques, or how?
We absolutely do. To be honest, a lot of our business comes just because if you build it, they will come. We built it, the customers. We have a database of over 1,000 customers across the UK waiting for the service to start in their area. So we've got lots of customers. Customers find us via our website. We have over 30 categories of advertising and marketing that we work through with our franchisees. So we don't bombard them with all 30 at the same time. That's a bit overwhelming. We just give them 3 at a time. We work through it. Initially, in the first month, when people join us, we have a conversation with them every week. We start with a business plan. So we're like, right, this is what you're going to do. So on day 1 of a business, what are you going to do? I used to be a franchisee of a business and it went horribly wrong. My franchisors were absolutely awful people. Literally bullied me until I had a nervous breakdown and had to leave the business and lost about 40 grand. So I've kind of built my franchise business model on how not, from my own experience of how not to franchise. We're really supportive. If you support people, they will absolutely succeed. We're obviously quite lucky that we're a unique service provider as well. So we don't really have a lot of competition out there, but we put a business plan in place. We know exactly what everybody's doing from day 1. We support them. We're always at the end of the phone. If they've ever got a question, they've only got to ask us. You know, they've got the support, not just of the head office, but the other franchisees as well. We're never one of those. So when I was a franchisee, it was basically, thanks for your 12 grand. Here's an operations manual, off you go and build a business. And I didn't know anything about running a business. This was a long time ago now. I didn't know anything about running a business. So that's why I joined a franchise, because I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't get any help and support at all. I left the business like a year after I joined them, just tail between my legs, which is funnily enough how I actually started Pet Business, but just a year after that. But yeah, we're 100% supportive, whatever people need. Nothing is ever too much for us because everybody's different. Everybody's got different needs and we want to support people and we want people to succeed. If they don't succeed, we don't succeed, and we want people to succeed.
I remember there was a glut of these like pet food delivery franchises back in the sort of 80s and 90s. And it was sort of like 5 grand or whatever it was buying, and we give you X amount of 100 customers, and basically you were like limited to selling their own foods, and the customers were just people who'd marked interest but weren't really customers. And these people were just buying these like vans, and they'd have to go out and buy a van which went with the food. They'd have to buy all the stock, pay the franchise fee, and then they had no customer base. Because I mean, I was a wholesaler, so I ended up with a lot of these people as my customers because they ended up buying wild bird food or other dog foods to serve people just because they were struggling to make a living out of these franchises. So I think like just the generalized support of a franchise is really important, and because it's, I think sometimes when a franchise buying is quite cheap, and yours is quite cheap, 10 grand isn't a lot of money.
It's not. No. We're practically giving it away at this point.
Well, exactly. I mean,
we just want to get people up and running, though. We just want to help people get a step up the ladder.
Yeah, I mean, McDonald's is like what, $1.5 million or £2 million or something like that.
Crazy.
Yeah, so it's 10 grand isn't a lot of money, but it's yeah. And how do you break it up in terms of areas? Is it by the city? Is it by a postcode?
It is by postcode, yes. So we have had all of our territories exclusively mapped. So we've got like 300 territories in the UK, which is about 150 part-time, about 150 full-time. Full-time is 100,000 households, or more, roughly 100,000 households. So, and given that 1 in 2 households has a pet, that's potentially sort of 50,000 customers in your area. So that's quite a lot of customers. And we've got a proven business model. We've been established in Milton Keynes 10 years this month. We've got other operational areas as well who are turning a really good profit, and it works. it works. A pet taxi is the future, and we're there to completely support people, help them find their customers as well. We've got proven advertising and marketing avenues, which, as I said, we've got like over 30, and we'll break that down because we don't want to overwhelm people with here's all 30, off you go. So we break it down for people, and we help them, because it's all well and good saying, oh, try this avenue. Okay, but what does that look like? So even down to the point when we're like, okay, if you're approaching this person, this is how you need to speak to that person. This is probably the information that they're going to ask from you. So we even break down all of the marketing and advertising into, let's help you to do this. This is how, so like the people taxis, for example, they're not very amenable to working with us, but we're not their competitors. So there's just there's so much extra support, because as you said, support is everything in a business. I think it's like 95% of businesses fail in the first year or something crazy like that. And the fact that we've been going for 10 years now and have other operational areas that have been going as well, I think, we've proven the business model works. There is very much a need for the service. Car ownership has dropped for the third year in a row for the first time in 100 years. Yeah.
No, it's interesting. And like, do you fix prices, or how do the prices work as well?
Yeah. So we work with the franchisee to work out what the pricing structure is going to be in their area, because we do have a formula for working that out. So we work with the franchisee. We don't just say, off you go and work it out for yourself. We actually help them with every aspect of the business. We help them with that. We never leave them alone. So our franchisee in Yorkshire is up for 3 awards. He's only been with us a year. He's up for 3 awards. We applied for those awards for him. And because we're pretty good at press, for one of the awards, the awards events haven't actually happened, they're next month, but for one of them, he made front page news in his local paper, which we wrote the press release and sent it out to journalists in his area. And he also went viral on the social media in his local area. So, and we did that for him because we want to help and support him. We want to get his name out there, and just, we want to help the franchisees. Because the more press we get, the more that raises our profile as well. So it's in our best interest. And the more customers they have, then that means more profit for us.
And do they all pay into a centralized marketing fund? Is that as a cost? Because obviously, look, one of the real benefits of being a franchise is having that centralized marketing, because a lot of people, it's running a business. It's hard enough running a business without doing all of the stuff that goes around it.
Absolutely. And I think that's why a lot of businesses fail, because it's just you. You're the person doing absolutely everything. You're doing whatever the day job is. You're doing the accounts, you're doing the social media, you're doing this, that, and the other. You're trying to raise your profile. And how is one person supposed to do that and make a success of their business? And I think that is the plus side of joining a franchise, is because number one, you're already joining into a proven business model. Number two, you're joining a bigger brand who already has a name out there. When you're a one-man band, it's really hard to, number one, even know what you're doing. And number two, it takes a long time to get it right as well. I've been going for 10 years and there's so many things I've paid so much money just to see whether it would work or not. And then it didn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, that's 300 quid. I'm not going to see it again. And it takes, you've got to earn that 300 quid. So it's, I think it's the plus side of joining a franchise is, yes, there's a buying cost. Yes, there's, like marketing fees or management fees and stuff. But, there's a reason that you're joining a franchise. There's a reason franchises have such a high success rate, because you're not on your own.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So, Claire, if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to do it?
So they can go to my website, which is pets2places.co.uk. That's where you can find links to all of our other social media.
Awesome. Thanks a million for coming in.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you.